I will do the opposite. I used to sit here and do nothing and regret it for the rest of the day. So now I will do the opposite, and I will do something.
Fresh Kid Z, Fresh Kid C,
yes sir,
Fresh Kid P, Fresh Kid T.
Oh yeah, we back.
Oh, and Zaffoon, by the way.
Yeah, Jones.
Yeah. Chitty bang, and we pretty much amazing.
Can we hear your new song, please?
I got you. Hey yo, I once was a kid, all I had was a dream. More money, more problems. When I get it, I'm a
George Costanza. Great introduction there, guys. What's up? I am at Andrew Erickson _. This is the _ podcast. I am your host, like I just said, Andrew Erickson, and I'm coming at you here live after free agency, where a lot of stuff has happened, but most importantly, the biggest news here is, as I get my microphone set up, the biggest news here, guys, is that Odell Beckham trade. And today I'm going to talk about a couple different things, a couple different topics, things that I have found that have been kind of interesting in terms of, what we're thinking in terms of, optimization, and kind of discussing optimization in terms of football. And do coaches and GMs, are they optimal by nature? And the intro, you guys heard it, was George Costanza. And basically the episode goes with him basically doing complete opposite of everything that he's done, and that produces success. And you can't just help think about if Dave Gettleman had just done the opposite of everything he had done, that they would be succeeding right now. If he had not held on to Eli, if he had not drafted Saquon Barkley, if he had not traded for Odell Beckham, would he have found success similar to what George Costanza did in that episode of Seinfeld? So it's a great intro, but we're going to dive right in. And the first thing I'm going to talk about, so I'm not going to focus on the Giants necessarily, I'm going to talk about another big free agency signing, and that's Le'Veon Bell. So we saw Le'Veon Bell sign a big contract with the New York Jets this offseason, and I have actually just written a post on the gridironexperts.com website on Le'Veon Bell, and basically breaking down the free agency signing, breaking down his contract, and essentially the contract-wise, he didn't really make money off of it. It was kind of null in terms of, did he make more money? Did he make less money? It was pretty close. The only thing he got more was basically guaranteed money. He actually saw less in overall average salary. So he was admitted last year. He refused a 5-year, $70 million contract with $33 million guaranteed. That was about $14 million per year. And he reportedly wanted to be paid $17 million to $20 million a year. That didn't happen. So in terms of what happened with Le'Veon Bell is that he held out, and he really didn't make that much more money. But, it really wasn't his fault, because a lot of things just didn't really break in his way. James Conner had a really good year. Todd Gurley got hurt and was easily replaced. So a lot of factors, he bet on other things to happen. Let's say that James Conner doesn't come in and the Steelers, fall apart. They win 4 games. Okay, then maybe it's a different discussion, but it just didn't work out for him. But now he's in a new home, and a lot of people are now projecting, okay, Le'Veon Bell, he's going to do this, he's going to do that, with Adam Gase, and trying to project, ceiling, what's his floor with the new team, and myself included. But the thing is, and as all this free agency stuff is happening, we as analysts, as fans, as fantasy football players need to realize that the best case scenarios aren't always necessarily what is going to happen. And that we tend to override best case as kind of what will happen. Because by nature, humans, I wanted to ask this question, and are humans optimal by nature? And we see this, with the analytics community and, all of these new metrics and data, and we're finding out that, oh, wow, coaches are not optimal at all in their decision-making. They're doing things that don't make any sense according to the numbers, so why are they doing these? And, why aren't they changing what they do? And I did some more research on just, optimization, by humans, not even just in football, but just in general. Because what I thought about it was do we really assume that they're going to use players in optimal ways? Or is that really the, not really the norm? Is that more abnormal? Is Bill Belichick actually a freak because he optimizes his players to the best of their ability? Is that actually not the norm? So and I'll kind of tie it back into Le'Veon Bell specifically because, that's, one of the more popular players we can kind of discuss. But essentially, you shouldn't assume that the coaches and GMs will use players properly. That shouldn't be the assumption. It's more or less like kind of a state of the fact, like, hey, like, Le'Veon Bell, they should probably use him in the passing game. Like, he's a really good receiver as a running back. Yeah, that's true. But a guy like Adam Gase, for example, I don't necessarily know if you could literally tell him that. And I think he knows that, but it doesn't necessarily mean he'll do it. So here's an example. So again, we as humans, continue to kind of do stuff because we kind of go back to our sense of comfort. Usually our bodies will always want to kind of stay in a ability of comfort, even when it comes to like homeostasis, maintaining everything. It's comfortable there. Your body never necessarily wants to go to the extreme in either which direction. So, here's an example of kind of like optimization. So I take the train into work, 5 days a week into the city of Boston. And I have this feeling in the back of my head that I'm not actually like going the most optimal way. Like I go to the gym and then I drive to the parking garage and then I park and then I drive and then I get in the train and then I go. But there's a lot of different train stations. And there's like a solid chance that I may not be going to the right one, that I may be possibly wasting time, and I'm not sure how much time. I'm not really sure. I kind of just like found a way and kind of went with it. And it's been what I've been doing for the past, several months. And I was thinking to myself as I was, kind of writing out the script for the podcast was, okay, so if someone were to tell me like, hey, like this is the way you need to get to if you can shave off 10 minutes off your commute if you do this instead. And it actually kind of happened to me when I was actually walking off the train. But anyway, I thought about that and I almost considered myself as like, okay, like, yeah, that's fine, but like, I'm just going to keep doing it my way. Even though it makes literally no sense for me to actually do that, I had the fallback and the thought to like, oh, I'll just keep doing it this way. Like, this is fine. Like, whatever. It's only like 10 more minutes. And that's kind of like what I thought about, like connecting it back to like the NFL and these coaches. They're so ingrained with what they've been taught and what works for them. They feel comfortable doing that. And even if there are like metrics and numbers that specifically say like, no, like this is the right way to do it, you're like, well, like it probably doesn't make that much of a difference. So like, I'm going to keep doing it my way. And I think that's applicable to a lot of coaches in the NFL and specifically Adam Gase. And even just like think about like times that you've done things that are suboptimal, such as a trip to the grocery store. How many times have you made a trip to the grocery store, we bought one thing? That literally makes zero sense in the world to do that. Because every time you go to the grocery store, you should be getting everything that you need for the upcoming week or so on and so forth. If you go to the grocery store for one thing, seems like such a wasted trip. That's not optimal. But we as humans do it all the time. We do things that don't really necessarily make sense, and it's more or less because we're either backed in a corner or we're just kind of like, oh, well, it probably doesn't make that much big of a difference. So again, I did some more research on this, and specifically, I kind of came up with this quote that, there is no doubt that in some situations, humans deviate strongly from statistical optimality in their judgments and exhibit inconsistent or irrational preferences, aka NFL coaching to the T. So, and kind of, what some scientists have kind of looked at in terms of, looking at this kind of phenomenon is essentially, even when you have like overt facts about a particular, case in terms of what's optimal and what's not, a lot of the times we're not really sure what's actually good. Like, what is the good decision? And the good decision is kind of, whatever is kind of generated as correct feedback, of a specific task. So it's like if they win, and Adam Gase, he won a decent amount with the Dolphins. Like, you can't say he didn't win games, and he even was quoted saying, hey, we tried to win games, we didn't try to put up stats. So, like, the ultimate goal is to win the game. So you can make the argument that whatever decisions he made, whether they use Kenyon Drake or not use Kenyon Drake, take a look at the games that they won. If they won in games where they didn't use Kenyon Drake, then that might be the head coach's right decision. It doesn't matter if Kenyon Drake was averaging, 6 yards a carry or things like that, but did they ultimately win the game? That should be the only decision that matters. And if they were winning games where Kenyon Drake was used less, even though I haven't looked at the statistics to back that up, but essentially just kind of like throwing the idea out there that that's their main goal as head coaches. You have to keep that in mind. They just want to win. They don't care about our fantasy teams. They don't care. They just want to win the game because that's what keeps them having jobs. So hopefully this gets you guys to kind of think about a little bit more about, optimization of specific players, and to not just go ahead and assume that, oh, well, this coach is, pretty smart, like he'll use his players correctly. That's not necessarily the case. Primarily they want to win. So that's kind of the first thing you need to look at, and not necessarily, oh, well, he's good pass catching back, and let's use him in the passing game. That may not necessarily work. And a lot of the times what I found as well was, in terms of some decisions, it's really more or less when the environment is stable, when you can kind of take a really look at it. And unfortunately, in the NFL, the environment's not stable at all. So it's really easy to tell sometimes when causation equals correlation, in terms of like, oh, well, I used Kenyon Drake X amount of times, and this caused us to win X amount of times. Like, the NFL doesn't work that way. So that's why it's hard sometimes to really justify like a player usage in terms of winning or losing, except really at the quarterback position. So just a cool kind of concept that I wanted to share with you guys about, using suboptimal, and that fact that, hey, like in your own life, you might be suboptimal in some certain things, but humans by nature sometimes do not always by default are not optimal in terms of their decision making. And one of the other reasons is because of just the way that we're coded. We don't necessarily take in the information that we have learned and have coded it in, and it's been integrated. So even if you present Adam Gase with, hey, like if you throw the ball to the running back X amount of times, like this will win, like it doesn't necessarily register with them that, oh wait, this actually causes me to win games. So that's the only reason I'm saying, like, if for some reason Le'Veon Bell isn't used as much in the passing game as we all like him to be as fantasy players, that don't necessarily be surprised by it, and that may be more of an exception of the norm than actually what should happen. We think that being optimal is what should happen, but that's not necessarily the case. So now kind of going into Le'Veon Bell, and what I think would work optimally for Le'Veon Bell is to use him in the passing game. Ultimately, the signing says a lot for guys like Sam Darnold. I think that's a huge bump up for him because he's requiring a very advanced weapon in the passing game, in the running game. So I like that bump up for Sam Darnold. But going back to Bell, so last season, the Jets, the highest reception leader on the Jets was Robbie Anderson with 50 receptions. Le'Veon Bell has had 3 seasons where he's had at least 75 receptions. So right there, it tells you, hey, ding, 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 like, let's use him in the passing game. And for the most part, Adam Gase has actually done that. So it's kind of a mixed bag, slightly so. Matthew Berry of ESPN had a stat about Adam Gase. So basically, in terms of pass catching volume. So every season outside of 2013, where it was the Peyton Manning year, which is like literally the most outlier season of all time, Gase's teams have always ranked 20th or worse in passing attempts to the running back position. However, it kind of comes with a caveat, as last season, and that's total targets, but not really percentage of targets to the running back, because the Adam Gase offense is just really slow on a terms of a play per play basis. How many plays they run per game. They're a slow paced offense. So with the totals for Adam Gase's offenses last season specifically was actually relatively high. So 23.7% of the total targets for Miami went to the running back position. That ranked 10th highest in the NFL. So the total targets wasn't high, but the percentage of targets was high. So this could kind of go back to, well, they're not using Le'Veon Bell in the passing game. Well, no, they are. They just don't have that many plays. So again, looking at the perspective of, well, they're not doing it enough, it's like, well, they just know the whole offense isn't doing enough. They're doing enough when they're on offense, but the team itself isn't running enough plays. So that's not necessarily Bell can control that. How many plays they run, per game. That's not necessarily something he can control. But in terms of RB finishes under Adam Gase, he's actually done, really well in terms of having high RB finishes. Since 2013, the top running back under Gase has finished as RB4, RB11, RB7, RB11, RB26, and RB14. So looking at that actually averages out to RB12. So, looking at an RB1, and I think that's where you can find Le'Veon Bell. I think that at no worse, he's going to finish as a low-tier RB1 is what I would say. He is a, really talented player in terms of usage. Kenyon Drake was an RB14. I think that Le'Veon Bell is miles ahead of a player that Kenyon Drake is, and Kenyon Drake, flashed at a lot of different points, but was never really used really consistently. But still, Le'Veon Bell's obviously an upgrade at the running back position for Adam Gase, and obviously the Jets, even though it's a different team. But those are just some things to keep in mind. And in terms of the Jets utilizing Bell's skill set, so the last season the Jets targeted the running back position. It was 96 targets, so 20.8%. And interestingly enough, the Steelers saw, without Bell in 2018, they ranked fourth lowest in RB target percentage, so 15.6%, and 13th lowest in total RB targets, 98 targets. So this was by Fantasy Pros. They have a target kind of breakdown. So essentially just having Bell on the team for the Steelers saw him significantly generate targets, up to 19.6%, and when he didn't play, it was lower than 16%. So that kind of tells you hey, when he's on the field, he generates targets. He just kind of demands targets in the passing game by him just being there. So I do and I think that is what will happen ultimately, but at the same time, there's always that chance that Adam Gase pulls a taco meme thing on us and just kind of goes bug-eyed and really kind of shocks the world in terms of, whoa, what are you doing with Le'Veon Bell? But so that's why I'm not saying you should really overinvest in Le'Veon Bell as an RB, stud guy. I think he's really going to finish probably as a low tier RB1, and I think that's where you should probably draft him. Because you don't know, this offense is still kind of up and coming. It hasn't really hit that peak yet. And I'm not so sure that there's still enough weapons for Sam Darnold to really take that next step. I think he will take another step, but maybe not a Patrick Mahomes level, second step there for the New York Jets. So that's kind of, the intro here with the Jets and talking about Le'Veon Bell and talking about optimization of the specific players. And then the last thing here before we move off the Jets is I want to talk about, the receivers. I don't really think Bell signing there has much of an effect. It could open some things up for Robbie Anderson down the sideline, but I'm not necessarily going to be Robbie Anderson, he's going to be a stud now. I think it actually really negatively affects Chris Herndon. An interesting correlation I've kind of found is between running backs and tight ends, and that pass-catching running backs that are better than their tight end counterparts actually, really eat into that tight end production. You look at, here's a couple examples. So Ezekiel Elliott last year, he had a monster season in the passing game because, well, maybe not because, but I don't think it was a coincidence that was the season that Jason Witten didn't play. 2 years with Jason Witten, his passing game was, kind of limited, and then Jason Witten leaves. Oh, wow, Zeke blows up in the passing game. Transversely, looking at the Chiefs offense with a stud tight end, Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt in 11 games is averaging 3 targets a game. And we all know Kareem Hunt is skilled in the passing game. And it's why isn't he getting more work in the passing game? Well, it's because I think those targets, those short area targets, are being accumulated by the tight end position. And this brings me back to, Chris Herndon for a tight end for the Jets. A guy who showed a decent amount last season, but I'm not so sure that you should buy into him, especially with Bell there, because I think those targets could get accumulated and consumed by Le'Veon Bell as opposed to Chris Herndon, where it was last year, when they didn't really have a pass-catching back. Bilal Powell got hurt, and they had Crowell, and then McGuire came in later on, and they Trenton Can't. They had a bunch of guys that no one really stood out for that role, and you could make the argument that Le'Veon Bell's the second. I mean, as a route runner, he could play you the best route runner on the Jets, overall, outside of wide receiver, or including the wide receivers on the team. So I think that was kind of an interesting point there as well. So yeah, think about it. When we look at the optimization of players, and think about in your life, are you optimal at everything you do? And that's going to bring me to my next point is we are talking about the winners and losers of free agency, even though, like, there's so much that we don't know. But as humans, we are just fascinated by the unknown. We are fascinated. And it actually, I was thinking about this as I was coming up for ideas of the podcast, and a bus drove by, and there was it was like a dinosaur exhibit. And it got me thinking, I was like, I love dinosaurs. It's like, why do people like dinosaurs so much? Because we don't know actually really anything about them. We like kind of think we know stuff about dinosaurs, but we really don't. But we like find that fascinating. It gets us excited. And that's the same thing with free agency and these players that land on new teams. And we're just like, oh, like, what's going to happen? Like, I think this could happen. Like, that'd be so cool. Like, we're always thinking about like, oh, like it could be such a good fit. And we mold these players and we're just like, oh, like, yeah, I could see it working. Like, I could see it fitting. And all the articles, like, I guarantee you could write any of the articles you read about free agency are going to be like how great how he'll fit, and you know he's going to be a great part of the offense, and it's a low risk move, and all those things. And where like we obviously want to be optimistic, like these are real people. Like, I mean, I'd like to see everyone in the NFL succeed, but like at the same time, like I know that's not fact. Like that's impossible for that to happen. So what can we kind of take away from this is that, you know, we as humans actually are, you know, we are fascinated by the unknown, but you need to take advantage of this. And the reason is because, you know, our lives for the most part are routine. So that's kind of like runs our life as routines. So, and if you think about the term just like unbelievable, you know, that term is actually just used to describe like really great things. But if you look at the word itself, unbelievable, it's really more just less describing something that isn't real. And that's something that we're fascinated by, you know, the fascination with power. Knowing something that other people don't know is knowledge, and knowledge is power. So that is something that's kind of accumulating between all these different things. And that's like, if you know something, like knowing that information, like being on a guy that's like, people don't know how he's going to do, like that's like the best. That's why everyone gets obsessed with the rookie hype. Like if you call out a rookie and you say he's going to be a stud and no one knows, and you're the one that calls him out, like Philip Lindsay last year. If you were on Philip Lindsay, like you feel like a genius. Like that's who you want to call out. So that's why people are more tendency to kind of go towards these players that we don't really know what they're going to do at their new teams. So take advantage of that. You're playing a dynasty league, you know, move these guys. Like, because more often than not, they're not going to work out. Like, just look at last year. So last season after free agency. So I'll just name a couple guys, you know, guys that move teams that, you know, for the most part, people are like, oh, like, yeah, like this guy's it's going to work out really good. And I'll name off some ADPs. So first off, Brandon Cooks was, you know, got traded from the Patriots to the Rams. You know who had a higher ADP than him? Just guess. Another Patriots wide receiver. Not Julian Edelman. Chris Hogan. Chris Hogan had a higher ADP, according to FF Calculator, than Brandon Cooks did last year. That is insane. And that's another thing. That's someone over-evaluating the area and the position. Like, Chris Hogan's, like, not that good of a football player. Like, that's the thing. You need to really think about that. When you're drafting your fantasy teams, like, really, really think and be like, is this guy actually a good football player? Like, yeah, like, he's good situationally, like, yada, 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 if everything goes well, like, okay, he's like, okay, but come on, like, he's not that good. Brandon Cooks is a good football player. Like, you just look at his numbers, like, the guy's put up 4,000-yard seasons to start his career, like, or outside his rookie season. Other guys from last year that moved teams that had hype. Jerick McKinnon, third round pick. Marquise Goodwin, 5th round pick. Build the hype up with Jimmy Garoppolo. Allen Robinson, 5th round pick. And he did okay. Deion Lewis, 6th round pick. Okay. How many teams did he help? Michael Crabtree, 7th round pick. All right. So, Sammy Watkins, 8th round pick. So, okay, we know now we're getting to some of the later rounds, but, you know, these are all guys that move teams, and, can't forget Carlos Hyde, 5th round pick, whereas Nick Chubb was going in the 12th round, and, yeah, like, okay, like, Nick Chubb, like, it literally would have made more sense to take Nick Chubb in the 5th round. Like, not to say, like, oh, well, we knew that he would, you know, take over, but we all kind of did know that he was going to take over eventually, right? So, like, really think about it. Like, we all got brains. Like, really think about, you know, these players, and is Carlos Hyde good? Like, is Michael Crabtree good? Like, oh, he's like the number one on the Ravens. Like, okay, like, is that good? But then you have guys like Eric Ebron, 13th round. Okay, he was really late. So it was a really low risk pick. So guys, I would say like guys that move up because they change teams in ADP a lot of times don't pan out. But guys that stay the same, that are kind of like really under the wire, like Eric Ebron, 13th round pick last year. John Brown, 11th round pick last year. John Brown was phenomenal in the first half of the season. And then obviously Lamar Jackson came in and destroyed everything in terms of passing. But you can't be mad about John Brown's production last year when he was actually like had a quarterback that could throw the ball down the field. So that's just something to really think about. And it brings me to this season where I want to talk about a couple guys. So Devin Funchess and Tyrell Williams. So Devin Funchess, Honey Funchess of Oats. So he's on a 1-year deal, signed with the Indianapolis Colts. And Tyrell Williams, who signed with the Oakland Raiders. So both of these guys essentially have 1-year deals. Devin Funchess actually has a 1-year deal. It's actually like, I believe he's $7 million, and then he's a $3 million like incentives. So like if he, or $7 million and $6 million in incentives, something like that, where if he makes like all pro, he has like a certain amount of receptions. And then Tyrell Williams, who, according to Austin Gall from PFF, who follows me on Twitter, big shout out Austin. So Tyrell Williams' 4-year, $43.3 million deal with the Raiders is essentially a 1-year prove-it deal with only $10.1 million guaranteed per over the cap. So Oakland can release Tyrell Williams and take on $0 in dead money after paying $10.1 million in 2019. So again, a 1-year deal. So it's important to know this stuff because there's a good chance that these teams both invest at the wide receiver position. We've talked about how deep this class is in the wide receiver position. Would it surprise you at all to see a young wide receiver overtake Devin Funchess or Tyrell Williams, who realistically, like, they're on their second contracts, they're on their new teams, like, they weren't good enough to really, like, have their teams want them to stay. And sure, it's could be breath of fresh air, but, like, I mean, a lot of times we see receivers move to new teams and it doesn't work out. So guys like this, like, and their stock has like gone up kind of. It's weird that they've both gone up, but they both really they've had like flashes here and there, but like, are these guys ever going to be starters for you on your fantasy teams? You know, whether it's Dynasty or not. Like, I have both Devin Funchess and Tyrell Williams in Dynasty. And, you know, after doing more research, I kind of want to trade them. And I think I can just get more for them. Like, if I can get high second round pick for both these guys, and I can draft a receiver, I think I want to do that. I just don't know what their real upside is, and they have not much investment from the teams that looked at them. It was like, hey, like, we'll give it a shot, we'll see if it works, and if it doesn't, like, all right, well, you're gone, see ya. So like that doesn't really instill me with confidence that it's like, hey, we'll see if it works, and it's not like, okay, we're gonna make you part of the offense, like, we're gonna give you all the tools you need. It's like, hey, like, if you work, like, great, but if you don't, like, see ya. So Devin Funchess specifically. So last season he finished as wide receiver 59 in PPR. It's great. And a lot of people are comparing him to like, oh, well, like Ebron like came in and Ebron played tight end and Funchess played tight end in college. And it's like, that has literally nothing to do with it because he doesn't play tight end anymore unless they switch him to tight end. And then they have 3 tight end sets. But I really think Funchess is a contingency plan at best. Like, they drafted a guy. They really like Deion Kane. So he's a guy I like to target really late in some of these, you know, drafts. And as rookie drafts, or not rookie drafts, but like, you know, targeting Dynasty as guys that no one's really talking about. But he's coming off an injury. So it's like, all right, let's bring Funchess in, like, just so we have some depth. And, you know, if Deion Kane really blows up, okay, we're going to go with Kane. But if, you know, if he does, you know, take some time to get, you know, healthy, blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, Devin Funchess is still, like, he's a 6'4" wide receiver that, you know, not everyone is, you just see 6'4" receivers walking around. So he has, like, some type of value in that, but that's not, like, but he's not fast, like, and he's not dynamic. He's not a dynamic receiver. Why do you think they got rid of him in Carolina? Because they wanted receivers that could do stuff, like Curtis Samuel, like DJ Moore. And Devin Funchess couldn't do that. And this is exactly what they did with Kelvin Benjamin. Like, could Devin Funchess be Kelvin Benjamin 2.0? Yeah, there's a possibility. Like, their athleticism is pretty similar. But, so, going back with Funchess, so 2017 was his best season. He finished as wide receiver 21. So, like, we're getting excited about a guy who finished wide receiver 21. Is that right? So, in 2017, he had 111 targets, which was 2 less than Christian McCaffrey. Nobody else on the Colts that season, or on the Panthers that season, had more than 50 targets. So, there was literally no one else to throw the ball to, so I had to throw it to Funchess. And he only finished as a wide receiver 21. So I looked back again. Okay, like look at Frank Reich offenses. So last 2 seasons with the Colts and with the Eagles. So the Eagles in 2017 with Frank Reich, 4 players saw 68 or more targets. In 2018 with the Colts, 4 players saw 72 or more targets. So what does this tell me? Like, hey, like they spread the ball out way more on these teams with Frank Reich, and Devin Funchess is just going to be another guy on the team that catches passes. Like, yeah, he could catch some touchdowns, but are you going to be able to predict that? Probably not. Like, you want to take him in best ball? Sure, but that's the thing. Like, he's going to be a touchdown dependent, like he's been his whole career. He's always been a touchdown guy, like touchdown dependent guy. He's a big receiver. He's a big target, but at the same time, like, that's essentially what Eric Ebron is. So it's like, is he going to be cannibalizing Ebron? Where at least Ebron, okay, he plays at a tight end position where you're going to have to deal with vitality anyway, and you take the good with the bad. You know, Ebron gets 0, but then he scores 3 touchdowns. Like, you're like, all right, I'll take it. But like at the receiver position, like you want some floor at least. Like if you don't want your boom bust guy to necessarily be a red zone touchdown guy. You want your boom bust guy to be a big touchdown like down the field, so at least you get like big plays from your yardage and a touchdown. Whereas like, oh, he had 1 catch was a touchdown, he got me 6 points. Like as long as, you know, if I played Deshaun Jackson, at least I can hope that he'll catch a 60-yard bomb as opposed to, well, Devin Funchess just caught a 1-yard touchdown, 7 points. Like, I'm hyped. Like, no, like that's not gonna help. So that's my spiel on guys like Devin Funchess and guys like Tyrell Williams. I just don't think they're really that good of players, but people are gonna get hyped. And they're gonna buy into the hype, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, like he's on a new team. Like, oh, we gotta buy into this guy." That's not the case. Like, if anything, you gotta buy out. You need to be disciplined and not necessarily buy into the hype. Not like the Browns. Browns hype, that shit's real. That is gonna be sick. Last couple things here. So Latavius Murray. He left Minnesota to go to the Saints. And again, everyone's like, oh, he's going to be the guy, like, he'll be the Mark Ingram, blah, 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 blah. And this just makes me think about, like, when the Patriots signed Mike Gillislee. And everyone's like, oh, he's going to be the guy, like, he'll be the Garrett Blunt. And, like, it happened for, like, a week. And then it was over. And then he got cut. And then he fumbled. Like, we don't know that, like, until we see it. We can try to project it, but, like, set in stone, like, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, maybe that's what they have in mind, but, like, what if he gets hurt? You know, what if this happens? You know, and I look at it as an opportunity, like, when everyone assumes it's, like, this guy, look at the other guy. Because more often, maybe not more often than not, but, like, there will be the occasions where, like, it ends up being a different guy who you could get that no one was paying attention to. So, you know, looking at guys like Minnesota. So, Minnesota now has a spot open behind Dalvin Cook. So, they could draft somebody. But they also have had guys that have flashed. So Michael Boone, Rock Thomas, dare I say Amir Abdullah. Michael Boone, 91st percentile spark score, 62nd percentile college target share. He's got flashed in the preseason last year. Go grab him in Dynasty. You know, add him to the end of your roster. He's a guy who could come in. Dalvin Cook hasn't proven that he can stay healthy. Like I'm just saying. And, you know, if they're playing on a good offense and wants to run the ball a lot, all right, cool. You got a backup running back. There you go. You can get him for free. The Kansas City Chiefs, you know, they just signed Carlos Hyde, and they have Damian Williams. But the guy I like, I don't think he's Darrel Williams, Darrel. Darrel Williams from LSU is on the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is a guy who's been behind another guy at all times. He's been behind Leonard Fournette at LSU. He was behind Darius Geis at LSU. Both those guys got hurt, and when he got the chance to play, he played really well. And if you look at his profile on playerprofiler.com, Darrel Williams, compare it to Carlos Hyde and Damian Williams, like, there's a chance. It could happen. Darrel Williams, mark my words. He could see starting reps at Kansas City, unless, of course, they take someone high in the draft. But, I'm just saying, like, Damian Williams, hey, he was the third-string running back, and now he's the starter. Darrel Williams is the third-string running back. Who knows, by the end of the season, he could be a league winner. Darrel Williams, league winner in fantasy football 2019. Is that going to be my bold prediction? I don't know. Maybe. But, again, he's another guy that no one's going to really care about, but someone you should still target. You know, these backup running backs that no one thinks are going to do anything, like, if you get 4 or 5 of them, like, put them at the end of your rosters. You know, keep it in mind, because we think we know handcuffs, but we don't. I remember I made a trade where I traded, it was like a Deion Lewis for Darren McFadden. It was like everyone knew Darren McFadden was like, oh, well, Zeke's going to get suspended. McFadden's going to be the guy. And it wasn't McFadden. McFadden wasn't the guy. So things change. You know, players emerge, you know, especially, and then we don't have any rookies drafted yet. And people are always like, oh, Devin Funchess, wide receiver 2. Okay, so what if the Colts go out and draft A.J. Brown? Or, you know, N'Keal Harry? Or, you know, all these other guys, like, a top receiver with their first pick. Like, okay, so you're going to take him or you take Funchess? Like, that's why you need to sell now. Sell now when people are like, oh, well, he's locked in here, because all of these guys, when the rookies get drafted, they're all going to go down. Everyone's going to lose value except the rookies, because the rookies are gaining value. Value cannot be created nor destroyed. It just fluctuates, similar to mass and matter. We learned it in science class. So keep that in mind, because the rookies are not on teams yet. Things are going to change. Most of these guys, their values are going to go down. Like, it's just a fact. So take that into consideration, you know, in your best balls, in your dynasty leagues, and just in general. You know, value cannot be created nor destroyed, which is why you're looking at a guy like Deion Kane, who's on the Colts. Hey, he's probably cheap. So get him. Go get him. So that's going to wrap it up for me, guys, today. And I'm going to talk about our next podcast. I want to really talk about the receiver position and essentially going from the number 1 to the number 2. Or, excuse me, going from the number 2 receiver to the number 1 receiver, and kind of the formula for success there. But without further ado, we will outro with the intro song, because that's how I like to, that's how I like to get stuff done here. So let's outro.
Fresh Kid Z, Fresh Kid C, yes sir. Fresh Kid P, Fresh Kid T. Oh yeah, we back. Oh, and Zaffoon, by the way. Yeah, Jones. Yeah. Chitty bang, and we pretty much amazing. Can we hear your new song, please? I got you. Hey yo, I once was a kid, all I had was a dream.